Welcome back to Hardball. The police chief in Sanford, Florida, has been forced now to step down temporarily because of his handling of the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. The tragic case has focused attention on stand your ground laws. These laws, in effect in over 20 states, according to various sources, allow people to use deadly force if they believe their lives are threatened. Florida was the first state to pass such a law in 2005, and it was fully supported by then-Governor Jeb Bush.
It's common sense to allow people to defend themselves, and to have to, when you're in a position where you're being threatened, there's a life-threatening situation, to have to retreat and put yourself in a very precarious position, defies common sense.
Well, we called Governor Bush's office. He's, of course, out of office now for comment, but we've not been able to receive a response for tonight's program. At issue is whether these stand your ground laws prevent violence or cause it. Joining me now are Chris Smith, a Florida State Senator, who opposes the laws, and Alan Gottlieb, who supports them. He's with the Second Amendment Foundation. Senator Gottlieb, Alan Gottlieb, would you tell us why we need stand your ground laws?
Well, Chris, we went through a period in the country where lots of people were being prosecuted because they stood their ground and tried to defend themselves, their family, and their property from criminal attack, and were prosecuted for it. Or in many cases, they had to wait, a year or 2 years to find out if they were going to be prosecuted for it. So this allowed them to have a legitimate means of self-defense, and we've seen it around the country. And the areas we've seen it, basically, we've seen violent crime drop and justifiable homicides increase, meaning the bad guy was the victim, not the good guy.
Well, let me help us here. How does it, most people think of self-defense as somebody's trying to kill me or do real bad bodily harm to me, and I have the chance to prevent them from doing it with a gun. I'm allowed to use it if it's really a chance of no way out. But apparently, under the law you've gotten written into law up there, you don't have to try to get out of this situation. You don't have to talk your way out of it or run your way out of it. You're allowed to just pull the gun and shoot. Is that the difference between the normal notion of self-defense and stand your ground?
Well, there was the stand your ground concept, and a lot of states had laws on the books that said you had to retreat. You had to find a window to try and climb out of. You had to find a back door to run out of, and you couldn't stand your ground and protect yourself or your property. And we felt that was definitely wrong. Now, in this case, I don't think we should be indicting the law. I think maybe we should be indicting the shooter.
Why do you think this case doesn't apply for, we're not going to try the case here, but most people think stand your ground is being used here, it will be used to defend Mr. Zimmerman in shooting Trayvon Martin.
Well, he may very well use that to defend himself, but the truth is, in this case, he was the pursuer. He didn't stand his ground. He called 911. 911 told him to break off and not pursue. He pursued. When you're pursuing, you're not standing your ground. So I'm not sure that defense is going to work for him at all.
Okay, let me go to Mr. Smith. Senator Smith, thank you as well for joining us. Give us your sense of the debate here from the other side. Why do you think, I understand you don't like these kinds of laws, why do you think they're dangerous to have on the books?
Because they have a big hole in them. I was in the House in 2005 and argued this very point when I voted against this bill, is that he can use it because it doesn't say that you can't be the pursuer. This law has been used by criminals who take themselves to the fight, and once they get there, use this non-rebuttable presumption to get away from the courts. Under what we talked about before, if you have a self-defense claim, at least that went to a jury, and a jury can look at a totality of the situation. Under this, it's a non-rebuttable presumption that you had the ability to stand your ground. So you don't even get to a jury. You don't even look at the facts, and that's why Mr. Zimmerman is still walking free, eager to kill again.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, let me ask you this, Senator.
Yes.
Let's talk about the standard reason people. I don't believe in all this. I'm pretty much a gun control guy, but people that walk around with rights to carry concealed weapons, and they have this stand your ground law. It seems to me that's a pretty potent concoction. If you're carrying a gun that's concealed and you have the right to take on anybody you believe threatens your life, it seems to me you're going for that gun. The guy can walk up to you, give you some lip, he can yell at you, he can be threatening, and to your thought, you can just gun him down. Is that true under the law?
And that's exactly the problem. This happened right outside of Orlando. Orlando is the tourist capital of America. If a tourist is at a gas station and I as a Floridian go up to him and say, hey, you cut me off at the light. When that tourist stepped to me to explain themselves, I can avail myself of this law, pull out my gun, and shoot that tourist dead in the state of Florida.
Alan Gottlieb, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, that's totally untrue. First of all, you have to be threatened. You can't just go up to somebody pumping their gas and say, I don't like you, I'm going to shoot you. You can't use this to defend yourself. That's obviously a criminal act with criminal intent.
Well, define when you're allowed to use your gun.
Well, it's been used in Florida in that way.
No, Mr. Gottlieb, tell me when you think you have a right to use your gun under this law.
Wait. If it's been used that way, then the person should be prosecuted. Under this law, it's a self-defense situation where somebody's going to do bodily harm to you. It isn't a situation where you go and pursue somebody and you attack somebody. These are people that just don't want anybody to have a firearm for self-defense, period. Okay. Chris, in all honesty, this past weekend, there were 10 murders and 40 people shot and wounded in Chicago. Chicago doesn't have a stand your ground law. In fact, gun laws in Chicago are so difficult, it's next to impossible to protect yourselves. Why don't we do a segment on that?
Well, let me try to do a segment on the whole thing. I'm trying to get to this very explosive case.
Well, Chris,
Senator Smith, let me ask you, Senator Smith, let's separate ourselves from this in terms of the names involved and try to imagine this kind of a situation. A vigilante guy who thinks he's Mr. the Cisco Kid or whatever he thinks he is. He's part of helping the law. Apparently the guy's called in 60 cases like this. He goes chasing after some guy. He thinks he's going to just stop the guy from getting away, keep an eye on him. I don't know what this guy was doing. But when they actually confront each other within feet of another, it becomes a physical confrontation. This guy had a bloody nose. He had a bloody back of his head. There was some kind of prima facie, we have to assume there was some kind of physical brawl. At what point does it become a confrontation, even though the other guy pursued him, when he's basically defending himself?
That's the problem with this law. They're so vague, and we argued that vagueness when they were passing this bill, and this bill has been passed in a lot of other states. It's too vague. It doesn't say that you can't be the pursuer or that you can't initiate the contact. The law is vague, and Mr. Gottlieb need to read the Florida statute as well as a statute that the NRA has passed in other states. It's too vague. It doesn't say you can't be the pursuer, and that is exactly the case. Yesterday in Miami, a judge dismissed a case under this law where a gentleman saw someone breaking into his car, pursued the gentleman down the street, stabbed him to death, and availed himself of this law after he pursued a car burglar down the street and stabbed him to death. It's being used in Florida.
Right. That's all we can say. I want to tell you something.
If he stabbed him to death, he didn't even use a gun.
Okay, we don't know all this case, and we're not trying it here. I'll tell you that. I'll support what Senator Smith said. This country and the world's history is filled with people who picked a fight with other people and found themselves on the defensive. Not every guy who picks a fight ends up the aggressor. The other guy could end up the aggressor. We don't know the facts, but this case is causing a lot of noise, and I'm telling you, sir, Mr. Gottlieb, that stand your ground is on trial here.
And
anyway,
Chris,
thank you.
If I could say, this is different from defending your home. This goes further. This is a perverted version of the castle doctrine where you can defend your home. It goes way beyond that.
Okay. I'm trying to avoid words like perverted and all this stuff. But anyway, thank you for coming on, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Senator, thanks. An honor to have you on. I like the defense.